Time to bring on our guests for the day. One of our guests that I have is somebody that I am very familiar with.
Hello.
Ona and I have been collaborating on a lot of Giant stuff throughout the offseason on my other show, Big Blue Avenue, that you can check out that I do with Tom. It is a lot of fun. And not to mention, we have also both made appearances together on the Brew Party as well with Andy Hopper, who you guys might remember appeared on the show a couple weeks ago. We talked about the St. Louis Cardinals. However, next to Sam Cardona is someone very new to Review and Preview. That's her brother, Danny. Danny, how's it going?
Hey, Hank, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. And Sam, how's it going? Great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Hank. I love your haircut. Cut the hair.
Thanks. It was getting way too long. It had to be done, and I had to kind of trim the beard as well. But it's funny that you should mention that because that, as you know, is a Yankee policy. But
very true.
Anyways, let's get right into it. The Yankees. I don't know about you guys, but even though they've won 4 of their last 6 games, I really don't know how I'm feeling because they swept Toronto up before the homestand that started with Oakland. You took 2 out of 3 from Oakland, and then obviously you had some crazy wins against Kansas City. But when you look at some of those wins, I don't know what to say. They lucked out. They had a triple play where they bailed out Chapman. Chapman looked absolutely wild in that 9th inning, pretty much the same as he looked in that second game against Kansas City. And, they've definitely had some lucky breaks this week, but I don't know how much longer it can last. And, Danny, let me start with you since you're the newcomer on this show. How are you feeling about the Yankees right about now as of today?
Well, as of right now, pretty good. But to describe this season, it's been a roller coaster ride. Put it nice.
Yeah, it's definitely been just, I think that's a good way of putting it, Hank, is that it's kind of lucky breaks, especially with that triple play, which is basically it's making history. We have 3 triple plays to end off games this season, and I think what's 4 is the record. So this is going to be it's interesting because a lot of people were very excited for this season, and the Yankees did come out. People were feeling really good about them, but it is. There's lucky breaks. It's a roller coaster of emotions. There's so many things going on. Sometimes they look phenomenal. Sometimes they don't look as good. So it's definitely, it depends on the day, basically, and who they're playing.
How often do you hear the broadcaster say the Yanks got lucky or what a lucky break?
Right. Very true.
Yeah, that's true. And, before I get into the next thing I want to talk about, I want to give you guys a little bit of fun facts. I think this is only the 4th or 5th time that a team has had 2 triple plays happen within a whole week of each other. And the first 3, 1 or 2 of them happened in the 1800s, and one of them was in 1909. So to put it in perspective, that's pretty rare. Right. The only other team that has pulled this off with multiple triple plays actually did in one game. The Minnesota Twins did this on July 17th, 1990 against the Boston Red Sox, actually. And up until then, the Yankees, those are the only teams that have had 2 triple plays within the span of a whole week. Pretty crazy. And not to mention, this was that triple play that happened at the end of the Oakland game was actually the first one to end one since, I'm sure Met fans will probably hate me for bringing this up, but the unassisted triple play that Jeff Francoeur hit into that Eric Bruntlett fielded on, I believe it was August of 2009, Mets versus Phillies. It was pretty much a lost season for the Mets. But the Phillies, as you probably remember, were on their way to a National League pennant. We know how happy we were after that World Series. A lot of fun. Been too long since that happened. So,
right.
Yeah. Basically, to give you guys an idea, that's how long it's been since triple plays of that matter had happened. And I think the 60s is probably the last time a triple play ended a game with a 1-run lead. So, yeah, a lot of history right there that I'm giving to you.
Yeah.
So, the first things first that I got to ask you guys about is, I think we got to talk about a guy who, at the beginning of the season, I said he was the elephant in the room, but now he has gotten a lot better. I think by my description, you guys know who I'm going to bring up. It's Gary Sanchez. In his last 8 games, he's hitting around 357, and I think it begs the question: is he someone that you should play no matter what at this point? Because we all know about Garrett Cole having Higashioka as his personal catcher, and he's not the first Yankee pitcher that's had this. I remember AJ Burnett, for some reason, didn't seem to do well having Jorge Posada as his catcher, and Jose Molina had to catch him during that 09 postseason. And I think Randy Johnson also had problems with Jorge Posada. You guys remember him at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Danny remembers more than I do. But yeah.
No. But in any event, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not the biggest fan of the person having a personal catcher like on the roster. Like, I'm of the belief that you just let the hot hand go, like, no matter what. What about you guys? I'm going to start with you first, Danny.
Good.
Well, personal catchers, it's you feel good about it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, that kind of thing. Because, with the whole controversy with the whole spider tag and the spin rates with pitchers and how Cole's strikeouts with each one went from double digits to single digits. Like, I think he played yesterday, I want to say. I'm not sure. But he had like 6 strikeouts, and you're kind of like, that's kind of not like Cole like. Cole usually has like 9 or 10, and he's like pretty much going into the 8th with like 110 pitches,
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like, with Higgy and Garrett Cole, it's like, like Danny said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But Gary is on kind of a roll right now, and he is improved himself over the past season, so it is a lot different. But we're all under the impression that Garrett Cole may or may not were using some sort of sticky substance. So maybe Kyle Gashioka kind of knows him a little bit better since he has been, like, maybe he can read the pitches a little bit better without the stickiness. But it's kind of like, okay, well, if Garrett Cole can have a personal catcher, why can't, somebody else have a personal catcher? And it can get a little tricky that way, but Gary's kind of improved himself over the season so far. He has been doing well, and I believe Aaron Boone even said that he was even thinking about having Gary Sanchez come in at some point. Who knows when some point is, but it's kind of a tough situation because of everything going on with the pitching and everything like that. But it's hard to say because Kyle Gashioka has been catching for Garrett Cole this whole time.
Yeah. Let's not forget David Cohn, too, who also had a personal catcher, because I remember you bringing up he had Girardi as his catcher because for some reason he just didn't like Jorge catching him. Right. And he didn't really Michael talked about it with him, and he was just like, yeah, I just did not feel comfortable with Jorge behind the plate. I always felt comfortable with Joe more.
Yeah, no, Andy Pettitte used Joe for a bit, too, in the late 90s, actually. And yeah, no, I feel like part of it has to do with Jorge being a little bit on the temperamental side. I don't know about you guys. I was a big fan of Jorge. He's one of my all-time favorite Yankees.
My favorite Yankee of all time is Jorge Posada.
I always thought of him as like the mirror image of Derek Jeter in the sense that like both were like really good leaders. The only difference was Jeter was sort of the quiet leader that led by example, whereas Jorge was fiery, loud, and would like get in your face if like you were doing something wrong. But by the way, before I get into any other things, I want to get to the comments a little bit. I see James is getting a little bit behind the peanut gallery here, so kindly disregard what he is saying. However, Sam, I got a little bit of a surprise for you. One of your biggest fans, but obviously mine too, just commented too.
Hi, Jamie. Hi, thanks, Mom.
So
it's been a while since I was able to say that.
Yes, no, I was hoping you could get that in there at some point during the show. Great friend of the program, and easily one of our biggest fans for sure. And so yeah, no, Gary, let me give you some stats regarding Gary Sanchez. I'm about to pull up right here.
Okay.
There's a guy that I follow on Twitter, one of my favorite accounts actually. He always posts a lot of like good stats like during Yankee games. This is his slash line in the last 23 games. He's hitting 342. His on-base percentage is 415. He's got on-base per slugging percentage 753. This is the last 23 games with 8 home runs and 18 RBIs. So, listen, as much as I've criticized Gary Sanchez a lot in the past, and rightfully so, and it's not just because of his hitting, it's his catching stuff that has driven me nuts too. I got to give him credit where credit is due. It seems like he kind of woke up from his 2-year coma, so to speak. Now, whether he can sustain this is something that I don't know is going to happen because, again, I know his makeup isn't the best, and we always see a little bit of like flashes of brilliance with Gary over the course of a few seasons, like
it's been a tease.
Exactly. So I'm not sure if I should get my hopes too high, but you know what? I'll take what I'm getting so far. And so again, if I'm going to criticize Gary when he's absolutely at his worst, I have to give him credit where credit is due. When when he's doing his best. And you know what? Like, I gotta say, like, it's funny how I see people on Twitter saying, "Oh, you can't be talking if you slandered Gary." Like, at the same time, this is why I compared him to Evan Engram like multiple times. Sam, you've heard this on Big Blue Avenue. Like, we know that we know that both of them have the talent, but we don't always see it, and we've also seen bad blunders from them at the wrong time.
Yeah, no, and the thing, what will be really interesting is that if Gary Sanchez ends up catching Garrett Cole at one point and it goes like really well, then it's like, okay, what do you need Higgy for anymore? And he's a great player, easily tradable. So it's going to be interesting to see if and when the day comes where Garrett Cole ends up throwing to Gary Sanchez, you know, the future of Kyle Higashioka is going to be up in the air as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe they probably call up one of their catchers in the minor leagues just to see what he's got. So
right.
I would agree.
Got a lot of great catchers coming up in the minors.
Exactly. And as much as I like Kyle Higashioka, and I feel like me liking him was more for because of who was the starting catcher, like,
yeah,
I think eventually he's probably going to end up being phased out. But for the time being, I totally understand why they're having him start during Garrett Cole starts. I just don't completely agree with it because I want to go with the hot hand. But anyways, speaking of the hot hands, we had Luke Voit returning from the IL. He had a big home run, his first at bat off the IL too. It's like anytime this guy comes back into the lineup, he breathes new life into it. I don't know what it is. He just has that vibe. Sam, what's your thoughts on him?
I really like Luke Voit. I call him the nice corn-fed boy from the West. I just think that he's just phenomenal. And, you know, he's a really big guy too. And he kind of like proves that like he is able to play a sport as like a bigger guy. And he lost a lot of weight over the past year. I've been a little concerned about him throughout this season. He has been getting injured. He has been going on the injured list a lot and then coming back and doing well and then going right back on the list. So I'm hoping he stays at this point. I really want him to because I do like him as a player and I think that he contributes a lot to the New York Yankees. And he seems like a great, just like chemistry wise, like he kind of fits into this team as well. But what do you think? What do you like about Luke Voit?
Well, like you said, with the energy that he brings, but also he's like, and this was talked about today. He was having a good game today. That he's that fiery guy who, you know, especially when they were going through that slump and there was a lot of question marks. He's the guy that was like, you know, behind closed doors in that clubhouse where we don't even know what goes on. You know, he's probably, you know, getting in fate, you know, like, come on, guys, let's go. Rah, rah, kind of guy.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I love Luke Voit. I love the energy he brings to the table. Although I'm going to be honest, if it were up to me though, I probably would rather have DJ playing first. And that's nothing against Voit. It's only because of this strategy that I really prefer. I would have traded Voit, let DJ play first, kept Didi, and then let Glaber play second. Because if I'm being honest, Glaber should not be a shortstop. I'm sorry, but like I feel like it's affecting him at bat, and not to mention it's also like, you know, and he's not one of the better fielders either. And like we've seen, I've really not been too satisfied with the way Glaber Torres is playing. I feel like, do you guys think that the switch of positions has really been affecting him at all? I'm going to start with you, Danny.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we've seen in the beginning the errors he's committed with being at short, you know, and you can always sometimes see on his face like he's not sure where his assignment is. You know, like, should I be over here now? Do I have to be over here because we're now shifting? While at second, he was kind of like, yeah, I know where I am right here. I'm going to be standing right over here, and I'm going to toss it right over to, you know, the short and or throw it to first base.
Yeah.
But it's kind of iffy, and then that's why you see the whole Trevor Story thing. We should trade him, get Trevor Story. But don't forget, if you've read the art, Trevor Story has also been in a struggle himself, and he was just recently injured. So what now?
Yeah. The thing is that like it is hard, I think, on anybody to be changing positions, especially so frequently. I know I never played like Major League Baseball before, but when I used to play softball, I switched positions all the time, and there were the positions I didn't like. There were ones that I did like, so I was better at it, and so it's harder to unless you're sitting in like one spot. It definitely is difficult to switch from different positions. And like you said, it's affecting him at bat as well. And playing different positions, have you using different muscles, different, parts of your body. So it's definitely not great. It is what it is, but I like DJ at first as well. I love Luke Voigt, but I think DJ LeMahieu is one of the best players on our team, and he does. He also plays
third. Let's not forget his time at third.
But he's easy. He can easily do that. He can easily switch positions. Not everybody is apt to do that.
Yeah, no, that's why DJ is pretty high on my list of my favorite players. He's very versatile. You can play third. You can put him at first. You can really put him anywhere in the infield, and not to mention he's a really good contact hitter. That's why I wanted them to sign him so badly, because you don't have too many of those guys in that lineup. It's centered on home run or bust, and I've probably been screaming about this ad nauseum for like the past 2 to 3 years. That's not the way I want this team to be like centered around. But oh well, unfortunately, Brian Cashman has his own. He has his mind set on analytics and launch angle, and unfortunately, they just don't seem to be too focused on hitting the home run and not as concerned about getting the guy home. But I don't know. That's just me. Maybe I sound like I'm the old man yelling at clouds here, but anyways, we got another comment right here from another person that I know, Sam, you are familiar with, as am I. It's none other than Tom Scavetta. What's up,
Thomas?
Tom, how's it going? Thanks for catching in. Folks, if you're watching this, please, if you want to leave a comment down below, we would love to interact with you guys. This is a very fun discussion that Sam, Danny, and I are having, and yeah, please, we would love to hear your opinions. We'd love to have your input and whatnot, because hey, your opinions matter just as much as ours. You guys are the ones that make our show. And got another comment here, another Met fan in the gallery. Paul Lombardi says, "Let's go Mets." And Paul, how's it going? Thanks for catching in. I hope you're doing well tonight. And of course, we got another familiar face in the comments too. Before I get to my next comment, I think you know who it is, Sam.
Is it Andy? It's Andy. What's up, man? The podcast triangle is complete.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Pretty much the big four of sportscasting. It's awesome, and have two of them right here. And I got to tell you, Sam, this is why I've been looking forward to having you guys. It's a lot of fun. And next thing I got to talk about right now is I'm going to talk about the outfield right now, because it's not great. I think other than a second baseman. Other than second baseman, by the way, some of my other second baseman ideas of guys that I would love to have are Adam Frazier of the Pirates. He's another guy who's
he's been in trade talks a lot.
Yeah.
And his lefty bat is really good.
Yeah, no, that's something the Yankees could use. Like they have way too many right-handed bats and not enough lefties. I mean, you had a lefty shortstop, but you let him go to Philadelphia for pennies on the dollar. So there's that. But I think outfield is the biggest problem on this team. I don't know about you guys, because Giancarlo,
absolutely,
he can hit home runs in bunches, but then you also know the guy can't always stay healthy. And when it comes to a point where you're like, oh, how long can he stay on? That's a problem. And then, not to mention, I actually think the Aaron Hicks contract was just as much of a mistake as Giancarlo Stanton, if I'm being honest, because at least with Stanton, you knew the guy was a proven home run leader and like a proven star. Hicks only had one or two great seasons, and you signed him to a 7-year contract based off of that one good year he had, or really good year he had. I want to say it was 2018. It just never made sense to me. And the problem with signing him to that is he's not a guy that you can rely on for hits. Career-wise, his average is right around 245, 250. We know he's a good fielder, but by signing that contract, it means that you're banking on him to be to age very well. And
right.
The problem is they're going to be stuck with him. And what makes it worse is he's now pretty much out for the season too. So
yeah,
which is I'm going to ask this to you, Danny, which outfielder do you want the most for this trade and deadline?
Well, he's been in trade talks a lot. It's Marte. Kettle, I want to say his name is, or Kettle. Not really. Kettle Marte.
Yep.
Oh, he's the hottest guy right now for trade talks. We're not the only guys interested in him. We also have right. Boston's interested. I think not sure, but it's two of us really want him, and Arizona doesn't really want to part with him because he's 27. He's controllable for 2 years too if they make a trade, and not to mention he's a lefty too, and he's very very useful out there. You can play left, center, or right. So also Sterling from the Marlins too.
Starling Marte?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Marte, why not?
Why not? I mean, we made a trade. We're familiar with a guy named Derek Jeter over there. It's like, hey, anyone else you want to make a trade with?
Yeah, let's hook up with Derek. I mean, we got the repertoire here. Like, why doesn't he send some Marlins over? Why not?
I don't know, guys. I'm a little bit concerned that as much as I love Jeter, I'm actually wearing my Jeter shirt right now as we speak.
He's got his Jeter shirt.
Away one.
I'm a little concerned that maybe Derek Jeter might be like turning into a bit of a snake oil salesman on us. I mean, after all, this guy took one or two of our prospects and gave us Giancarlo Stanton and that albatross. So,
yeah,
can we really trust
it all the time? Boy, did we get fleeced by the captain.
Yeah.
And, we got a few more comments. We got Tom is another one joining in the Mets corner. Jeez.
God, killing us, guys.
You guys in the peanut gallery, man. No, it's all good. We still love y'all. And Andy Hopper has a good question, actually. He says, if the Yankees let Boone go at the end of the year, who are your ideal managerial candidates? Well, I'm going to start off by saying I would more than love to have Joe Girardi back. Say what you want about how he managed the bullpen and his binder, but Joe had the passion, and Joe always seemed to get the most of the Yankees. I don't care what you want to say about his job in Philadelphia. I love Joe, and I still think it was a mistake to let him go. But that ship has sailed. Maybe Hensley Mullins. That's a guy whose name was really talked about as far as being a good managerial candidate. I know he was part of the Giants' 3 World Series championships in the early 2010s. And fun fact, I don't know if you guys know this, he was on the Yankees in the early 1990s. He was actually one of those prospects that didn't really quite pan out, but definitely an obscure Yankee name nonetheless, who could very well be a decent manager. I mean, he's had the experience, and he knows a lot of language too, which is actually more valuable than people realize. But I think he would be a good one. Maybe Carlos Beltran too. I know he's been caught up in the Astro scandal, but he's got some Yankee connections. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to having him as a manager. Danny, what about you? I'm going to let you start this off.
Well, yeah, especially when we had these struggles, and then, the media was getting on it. They even asked Cashman, hey, what's the future like for Boone right now? He said, he's our manager, for better or worse right now. So that just goes to show you, here's what I learned. You fire a manager mid-season, you pretty much gave up on the season.
Yeah.
There's no other way, because it's we're firing you. It's who's available? It's almost July.
Mm-hmm.
We got 90, 89 games to go. And then here's what everyone was already asking for Buck Showalter to come back.
I'm not really a big fan of that idea, to be honest.
Exactly. But, Yankee fans are, especially on social media, they want to fire everybody, bring back everybody else. And, we want the best. And it's 1 minute we're doing great. I loved him. I never hated him. Then the next thing you know, fire him.
Yeah. I think a name that's kind of been thrown around, I don't know how serious it is, but some we were mentioning before, Jorge Posada has kind of been his name's been thrown around a little bit about a managerial position. As someone who loves Jorge Posada, I would feel like that would be really awesome, just because I think that he would be great. But I don't know how serious that is. I don't know if they're actually thinking about that, or if the Yankees are even going to bother looking at that, because I know that he was talking to Derek about possibly being involved with the Marlins and that kind of thing.
He's kind of in that advisory role.
Yeah,
he didn't really take a job there.
See, Andy's giving you a hard time about that.
Yeah. I do. I love Jorge. He's my first baseball jersey ever. I was talking about this on my podcast yesterday with Andy. Is I didn't wear baseball gloves when I played softball because I thought that Jorge was so cool because he didn't wear it. Meanwhile, I didn't know that he was dunking his hands in the tar, basically. But yeah, I think that Jorge would be great to have as a manager, in a managerial position. But again, I don't know how serious that is.
Yeah, no, Jorge wasn't the only guy to do that. If I remember correctly, Moise Alou didn't wear gloves when he was batting. He did the same thing.
Yeah.
And, we got more from the peanut gallery. And
Piazza was
no comment. No comment. And
No comment.
however, somebody who does support your opinion on this, my mom.
Jamie! Yay, hip, hip, hooray.
I see more from the peanut gallery. Andy says Sam would have been banned.
Okay, Andy. Relax, buddy. I would not have been suspended. I would have, made it discreet, just a little bit, not like how he had his whole helmet was basically brown from it because he couldn't, like he had so much pine tar. It was insane.
Yeah, no, Jorge is great. Here's the problem I have with the idea of making him a manager. I don't know if you necessarily want to commit to the idea of having a legend as the manager because Jorge is popular among other players.
Yeah.
The example I really like to use of Yankee legends who people really want, Don Mattingly is the name I get heard the most. And like every Yankee fan I know of, or at least the older ones who are like, say, maybe mid 30s to like 50s, they love Don Mattingly. Like he embodied everything about the Yankees. And obviously that's true. He played hard. He played through a lot of pain. And there was a stretch where he was probably the best player in baseball from the mid to late 80s too. But the idea of having him as a manager of the Yankees, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of him with what he does with the Marlins and the Dodgers. I thought the Dodgers probably could have done better with him. The Marlins, I'll give him the Marlins. He had a good season with them in 2020, even if it was 2020 and a shortened season. But the problem with being in bed with the Yankee manager, so to speak, is that it's a popularity contest you're going to lose because then fans are going to are going to defend them and they're going to be in a position to be fired eventually. And once they get fired, they're like the fans' view of them changes. So,
Yeah, you're right.
It's an unwinnable war basically. And especially guys like them who are popular, that's really tough to see. I really don't know if I want that. Buck Showalter, if I'm being honest, is a guy I kind of think is somewhat overrated in the sense that while he did lead the Yankees to a bit of a turnaround, I'm going to be honest, I don't think they win as many championships with him instead of Joe Torre because Joe Torre had a way of managing personalities like nobody else. And Buck Showalter, if you look at his track record, he got fired prematurely from the Diamondbacks too. And then if you look at the Orioles, he gets shamed for not using Zach Britton in that wild card game, and rightfully so, because why on earth would you use Ubaldo Jimenez in that situation? But in any event, I'm just not as big a fan of Buck Showalter. He'll get teams good for like a brief amount of time, but like then there comes a certain point where they either he's gone too soon or they decline. So I don't know whether that's necessarily a Buck problem, but I'm just not that big a fan of Buck Showalter, if I'm being quite honest with you guys. And not to mention, he's like, I hate to bring up age, but he's in his mid 60s at this point. I don't even know if he really wants to manage again. And not to mention, the game has really changed since he last managed. So I'm not against that. I'm not really for that idea. But with that being said, I'm also not the biggest fan of Aaron Boone. And now, to be fair, I don't necessarily fault him entirely for what's going on. I mean, look, he made some questionable decisions this week. First of all, why would you remove Luke Voigt when put in Tyler Wade late in the game? Was that really necessary? And I could get into Tyler Wade's fielding, so to speak, with not throwing the guy out at home and whether he should have hit a double play. But the bottom line was Luke Voigt should have been in the game. I don't really know why Wade was in there in the first place. And not to mention, there was also him walking Santana with 4 pitches. Now that one,
that got the most attention.
That one, despite a lot of other moves he's made, I'm not going to shame him for because Santana was a tough hitter. You had a rookie who had never gotten a major league hit on deck. I'd rather face that guy than the known slugger who can do damage, so to speak. Because let's face it, like you don't know what he's going to do in bottom of the ninth in pressure situation, or sorry, top of the ninth rather, because it was at Yankee Stadium. But you get the point.
Yeah, no, I think the thing is that with the whole walking thing, I think that it would have been a much bigger story if the Yankees ended up losing that game. Like it would have been like, oh, that was the reason why they lost because they did walk that run in. But I mean, I understand where his mindset was coming from though. Like you were saying, if we're gonna face anybody, we'd rather face the guy who's less experienced than the guy who's more experienced. So it makes sense. It kind of just questions. I mean, Chappie got kind of upset about it, and he made himself very vocal, and you don't want to strain that relationship with your pitcher, especially, a closing pitcher.
Your main closer guy.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you don't trust your closing pitcher to strike this guy out, or you don't trust him enough to have him pitch to this guy in the last inning. So I can understand, again, where his mindset was, but also you should be able to tell your pitcher, this is the things that you need to do in order to strike this guy out so that you don't need to walk him, especially in the 9th inning. So it's definitely a little bit questionable. I don't really, I wouldn't have done it, but I understand why he did in the first place.
Yeah, and not to mention Chapman's pitched in Game 7 of World Series. I don't think really it should be that big of a deal to load the bases, even if it's just loading the bases. The guy you're facing next is inexperienced. Him walking, that's on Chapman. I'm sorry. As much as I want
yeah.
And by the way, I don't know about you guys, but Chapman gives me anxiety every time he pitches, because he either really has or he doesn't. It's not like this guy who in the back of my in my background, who whenever he would go into a game, you knew that every 10 times he was going to get the save. Chapman,
and it was rare to get that hit off him.
Yeah,
exactly. And we got a few more comments. David Guyette says, "Good evening." Tom says he agrees with Paul on the Piazza part. Again, no comment. I'm not necessarily going to disagree, but I have my reasons for liking Jorge Posada. Let's just put it that way. And so, yeah, no, it's been an interesting week. I'm glad the Yankees took 2 out of 3 from the series anyways, because let's face it, the Yankees needed that win yesterday too, because, you had the lead in the day before that.
Talk about dramatic. Yeah.
You gave up all those runs. You almost came back, but then fell a bit short. And then you had the big comeback with Gary being clutch, and then Stanton had a really good at bat too. Again, I know I've criticized Stanton a lot in the past, but that was a really patient at bat, and he put the ball in play and got a single. I want to see more of that from Stanton. And then last but not least, you had Luke Voit getting that big hit. And there's been a lot of interesting things with the Yankees, and we got a big series this weekend against the Red Sox at Fenway. Last time we played them, we know what happened. We're not going to get into full detail. It was bad, but coming into this series, what are your guys' thoughts?
We're healthy and we're on a hot streak right now. Let's bring it over there.
Yeah. Honestly, it's basically just do everything that you didn't do the last time. It was such a hard thing to watch in the last series. It was just
on our own home turf.
Yeah, it hurt more that it was in the Bronx, and it was just really just painful to see. But yeah, basically we just got to step it up. We just got to make sure. But I think that's great.
Our pitching's got to be good.
We're on a hot streak right now, which is really great, and it's promising, because when we get on a streak, we tend to keep it for quite some time. And the fact that the last series did happen, it's a bit of a revenge series here. They don't want to lose again, because then we're gonna have to hear it forever from Bostonians. It's just gonna suck. So I hope that things go well this time, but again, do everything what you didn't do in the last series.
So before I give my thoughts, I'm going to bring up a few comments from David Guyette, who I believe watched us maybe our second or third episode, but it's great to see you back, David. I hope all is well. He says, good evening, and he says the Yankees now need to sweep the Red Sox. Listen, I would love for that to happen. I don't know if that's a realistic prediction, but I hope you're right, man. And
but we could win the series.
So let me give you the pitching matchups for these 3 games before I make my predictions. So we got Domingo Germán pitching on Friday against Martin Perez. Saturday, I believe you have Nathan Eovaldi against Jordan Montgomery. This is a game I'm obviously worried about, and I'm going to mark as a loss right away, because I don't trust the Yankees whenever they go up against Nathan Eovaldi. You know what happens whenever he pitches against us. You saw how we let him go. There's a reason why he's extra motivated every time he pitches against the Yankees. And if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I actually thought he was a decent pitcher, and I thought we could have used him the past few years. But that ship has sailed. Game 3 of the series, you've got Garrett Cole against Eduardo Rodriguez. Now, that's the game the Yankees have absolutely no excuses to lose. Eduardo Rodriguez has had a mostly down year for the Red Sox. He had a better start in his first game against the Yankees the last series, but for the most part, I think Alec Walt, who I had a few weeks ago, he's a big Sox fan. He can tell you that Eduardo Rodriguez is probably the one guy in his rotation that he cannot trust. That's a guy who you both should definitely check out. I know he's a Sox fan, but he does a show called Down the Block Sports. Give him a subscribe on YouTube, by the way. And so my prediction, I think the Yankees are going to take 2 out of 3. I think the pitching matchups in the series, I think, are more in their favor. You got Domingo Germán pitching the Friday. And remember, he was the one that started on the crushing blow on Sunday where they probably should have won in that last series. And so I think they win his start. And as I said, Garrett Cole against Eduardo Rodriguez, on paper, that should be an easy win. But then again, as John Sterling often says, well, Susan, you can't predict baseball. So
very true. Very true. But yeah, I think that's valid. I think that's a valid prediction. 2-1 with Fire under us, healthy and everything like that. I think it's definitely.
Not to mention Voit and Sanchez are doing good, especially Sanchez.
Yeah. So with that coming in, obviously if Cole's pitching though, we'll have Higgy in on that last game. But I think I know that we already talked about Sanchez and everything, but I still think that Higgy is a great baseball player. I think that, as someone that you can swap out like that, I think that he's still very, very good. He hits well, he catches Cole well, and I think that it's going to be a good series. Hope for the best.
Definitely. Higgy's a very serviceable catcher. I don't think he's a bad ball player by any stretch. In fact, I don't think anybody who reaches the major league ball level is a bad ball player necessarily, but
true.
In any event, I think it's going to be a great series. I'm really looking forward to it.